Good evening, guys. Hey, coming at you Monday night, 22 days until the election. And hopefully every one of you have already helped out with different campaigns across the country. If not, I don't mean to sound like I'm talking down, but what the heck are you doing? I mean, we've been talking and fighting, trying to get change made. The way change is made is through legislators, whether we like it or not. And to build those relationships, we need to be working actively on campaigns of people who support the shared parenting issue. All across the country, there are people that support our issue who need our help. And if we don't help them, the opposition, who is highly funded, I mean, you have to realize the radical DV groups, the attorneys, the bar associations across the country are pouring millions and millions and millions of dollars into the type of people who oppose our issue. The only edge we have is the grassroots efforts of a bunch of volunteers. And when you add up all the different shared parenting groups across the country, we've got about 1.2 million people if you add up every single one of the pages. Now, some of them are double counted, so when you figure out which ones aren't double counted, about 1.2 million people following all the shared parenting pages across the country. Do you realize if 1.2 million people each volunteered 5 hours next week, how different the landscape would be for the shared parenting issues and for Title IV-D reform at the federal level? It would be predetermined history. I mean, it would be over. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of people out there doing it. So I just encourage every single one of you. You've got 22 days left to get involved with a campaign. Find a candidate in your area that supports shared parenting and get out there and fight for them. At the federal level, I try to keep this as non-political as possible, as non-partisan as possible, but I think some of you know there are some federal candidates who are the biggest supporters of the Violence Against Women's Act. Now, I would never want violence against women, but a lot of times the title of some of these bills is very different than what the bill actually says. Anybody who's ever been through family court knows that false allegations run absolutely rampant in family law. And the Violence Against Women's Act is not truly a Violence Against Women's Act. It is a Encourage False Allegations Act, and it's getting stronger. And there are people that were some of the key people who fought to get that bill started and are wanting to radically increase it. To where if you don't share your checkbook with the other person, that's financial abuse now, and just all kinds of things. So I encourage you, find out where the candidates stand on these. You need to know where they stand on that VAW bill. So anyways, what I did want to get to tonight, I'm going to keep it pretty short, is the tip for the week. And this tip for the week is something that's absolutely critical. But I'm just surprised as I went around the country in all the different states, and most of you know, every state that I go to, I try to bring someone with me. I know myself, in the past, I used to love it when I would get a chance to go with some of my mentors and observe them. Because if you never get a chance to meet with a legislator in the same room with someone who has experience getting bills passed, you have no conceptualization of whether you're doing it right or wrong. And sometimes people, they've never seen anyone else do it, so they think, well, I'm doing it right. And they just create this pattern, and they're so far off base, but they've done it so many times, they actually think in their mind they're doing it right. And I was very fortunate to be mentored by people like a Dan Meehan and people like that in Missouri that have worked on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation. And what amazes me is how many people miss probably the single easiest edge that you could get when meeting with a legislator. And that is, believe it or not, is to ask them about their kids. I mean, here we have an issue that deals with kids. And we have so many people that will go into a legislator's office and they immediately jump right to the issue. Well, let me tell you about what happened to me, and let me tell you about this, let me tell you about that. Realize this, when you're trying to convince someone, when you're trying to persuade someone, you will do more persuading by asking questions and getting them talking than you'll ever do by you talking. And what do most people love talking about? What do you love talking about? I love talking about Levi. I mean, my eyes light up when I hear somebody ask me about Levi. The other thing it does, it connects me with them. It lets me know that they value me as a person if they're talking to me about Levi, that I'm just not a statistic to them. So you're going to do a couple things by asking about their kids. Number one, you're going to build a psychological connection. And I don't have time to go into all the psychology of what that does. but psychologically it breaks down the barrier wall that they have. They have a psychological barrier wall because they're hounded by hundreds of people on a regular basis. So there's an automatic psychological wall that goes up, a gatekeeping type wall. They don't mean it in a negative way, it just is a fact of life. By you asking about their kids, that pulls out a different part. That, instead of affecting the legislative part of their brain, that brings out the personal relationships part of their brain. And now you've connected with them on a personal level. Lets them know, obviously, that you're thinking about their kids. It also connects our issue to kids. Because now as you start talking about shared parenting, you're not talking about your kids. You're talking about kids in general, and more importantly, you've already asked about their kids. So psychologically, they're connecting what you're talking about, and you need to bring that up at a couple points. You know, how would you feel if you only got to see your child 4 overnights a month? So it helps bring the issue, and then the most important thing, it makes you stand out. I promise you, if you go and ask a legislator about their kids, you are one of less than 2% of the people that stepped into their office that week and asked about their kids. So they will remember you. If you go straight into the issue, I promise you, you've got a 90% chance they won't remember who you are. They just get met with so many people. Ask about their kids, they're going to remember you. So it's a small tip, but make sure, do your research. Go on Facebook, go on LinkedIn, do some social media searching to find out. Google search their name, find out about their kids. And if their kids play soccer, ask them, hey, how's Joey doing in soccer this year? That lets them know, wow, this person has done their homework and they care about me, they care about my kids. Very important. 2 other things I did want to point out. There is a group of people we're getting together on the Achiever Productions page. It's a group of people, of like-minded people that are all working together. So that is a special Facebook page. You'll have to ask to be accepted to it. Now this is primarily for people that are sort of on the inner team. I know there's other people working on different teams, and we encourage some of those other teams. We definitely do. There is definitely not a competition between the teams. But these are people that are really working hard within the AFESP team primarily. But it's Achiever Productions Legislative Training and Development. So I encourage you to request to be added to that page. Last thing I do want to bring up is November 21st will be the 3rd Annual National Shared Parenting Summit, or Legislative Summit. And this is the one that is specifically for getting legislation passed. We do the annual Shared Parenting Conference every year, which has been a great boost for everyone to be able to help connect. But that one also talks quite a bit about helping to raise awareness and parental alienation, and parental alienation awareness, I should say. This Legislative Training Summit on November 21st is specifically for people who are meeting with legislators. This is 100% high-level training of different tips and tricks when you're meeting with, and I don't say tricks in a deceptive way, by the way, but strategies to help you when you're meeting with legislators. And I can't encourage you enough. If you're wanting to be involved in legislation this year, there's just no excuse. You've got to do whatever you got to do to get the time off, to get the finances, to get to St. Louis. Tickets are only $50 for the regular tickets, $100 for VIP. Obviously, it takes funding to get legislation passed and to do all these trips to D.C. that we do. So we're trying to combine this with a fundraiser by adding value to the training. So if you can afford the VIP tickets, we would greatly appreciate it. That helps us fund our mission. But this year in particular, we've added a couple of things. One, and the most important, is Leadership Institute, the #1 political training organization in the world, bar none, will be there live and in person. They've trained over 240,000 people at this point across the world, and they're going to be coming and targeting their training skills or their training techniques to the equal shared parenting community. So that is going to be just huge, not to mention the connections they have for you to be able to build relationships with some of these people. We also have Paul Kurtman. Paul used to be the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee in Missouri. So he's going to tell you from a legislator's perspective a lot of the same things I say, but a lot of times when I say them, people are like, yeah, that's just Mark. But to be able to have someone like Paul telling you from a legislator's perspective what resonated with him and what turned him off as people come into his office. And then we also have Carnell Smith, who is the one who has led the charge on paternity fraud across the country and gotten several laws passed in several states across the country. So Carnell will be here live and in person, and I'm still working on getting a few extras. Ed Martin will be a part of the program. We don't know whether he'll be live and in person or by video, but I think some of you know. Ed is one of the top influencers in Washington, D.C. that has direct connections. He's at the White House on a regular basis. He's got connections with dozens and dozens and dozens of members of both the House and the Senate. So it'll be very powerful to have him, and I'm working on a couple others. But tickets are now available. If you go to AFESP.com, I think in the upper left-hand corner, there'll be a thing that'll say, when you pull that little bar down, it'll show registration and events or something like that. But I strongly encourage you, if you can't make it there in person, if you could make a contribution to help make the event come off, it would definitely help. There is quite a bit of an expense to put an event like this on, and we are going to be a little limited as far as numbers of people allowed in the ballroom this year. So it's going to be a little bit hard to be able to do more than just break even. So if you can afford to be a sponsor, we'd greatly appreciate it. Anyways, that's about it for now. I encourage you, if you haven't done it yet, go to AFESP.com, register, get your tickets for November 21st. I promise you, it will be literally the most in-depth training we've ever had so far on how to get legislation passed. As I've said over and over, I don't want to be the guy that gets the legislation passed. I would be much more proud to be a small little part of training you so you can be the difference in your state. That's what November 21st is all about. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will talk to you later.